Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Selling Greenville. I am your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville, South Carolina. You can find all of my contact information in the show notes, and please give us a rating, a review, a subscription. Go ahead, subscribe. If you need to download as you're getting onto a plane, do all of that. Make sure that you are getting this podcast however you need to. By the way, we are on a lot of different podcast platforms, pretty much any platform that you would use. If we're not on one that you use, let me know, because I would love to get it on there. There's no reason why I can't get it onto other platforms that you guys are using, so just let me know if that's the case. But we're on a lot of other platforms. Just search for Selling Greenville, and you should be able to find us if you don't like to use the iTunes podcast player. Today, we're going to be talking about how realtors kind of size up each other, or how the dynamic goes from realtor to realtor. Because the way it works in this market is you have different real estate offices, and those offices are run by a broker. And those brokers then have underneath them the realtors. Now, realtors are independent contractors. We're not employees of the real estate firm, or at least that's not normally the way it works. Usually we're independent contractors for the broker that we work under, but we basically represent the broker. And so this is why, a dual agent situation in Greenville, or a what we would call in this area designated agency situation, is when you have two realtors that are under the same broker. But you have all these different offices, all these different brokers, and then underneath them, all these different realtors. And so at the end of the day, different offices get different reputations among realtors. And I'll be honest, when I get a text message from some real estate, from some realtors that are with certain real estate firms, I don't want to say I roll my eyes, but it's just kind of like, oh boy, what's going to happen now? Because there are those reputations, and I really do try to keep an open mind. At the end of the day, anything that my clients need to know, for instance, if an offer comes from a realtor or a firm that I've not had good experiences with, I'm always going to present that offer. That's my legal responsibility. That's my fiduciary responsibility to my seller clients. If a home comes on the market that is listed by a realtor or a firm that I've had bad experiences with, I'm still going to present that to my buyer client. So we need to parse here, and I'm not sure every realtor does that. I can't say that for sure, but they're supposed to do that. But we need to parse here right at the beginning what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that I show or that it's widespread that there is partiality from one realtor to the next. But what I am going to say, and the argument that I am going to make, is that certain realtors, just based on their name, their presentation, etc., and the firm that they're with, gives their clients a leg up versus others. And I think that that's pretty common sense, but I want to give an example from just recently so that you guys fully understand what the dynamic is here, and kind of pull back the curtain a little bit so you can see a little bit behind the scenes. So I had some clients that were looking to buy a home, and we were in a situation where they had a home sale contingency, a lot of uncertainty with that home sale contingency, but they really wanted to make an offer on a house that they really loved. And so I wrote up the offer the best I could, really try to paint the picture for the listing agent, who is another, I'm with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, C. Dan Joyner Realtors. It was another agent, same firm as me, and one that I've worked with before, and really tried to paint the picture for her of, why my clients were a strong client, despite the fact that they had to sell a home. In this market, which is a seller's market, needing to sell a home and having a home sale contingency, we've talked about this in a recent episode as well, but that really puts you behind the eight ball. That makes it very difficult to buy a home. That being said, we were making some traction, but we needed to narrow the price gap a little bit. My clients, they wanted to try to get the price as low as possible, obviously. And at the end of the day, it was a little bit too low for the sellers. So we were trying to narrow that gap a little bit. Well, guess what happened during the time that we attempted to narrow that gap? Another offer came in. This always happens. Again, this is a difficult market if you're a buyer. Another offer came in, but we were in luck. We were in luck because this offer also had a home sale contingency. And so if they had not had another home sale contingency, I don't think I would be doing this episode. But they did. And here's the thing. I get a call at like 10 p.m. from the listing agent. And I see her number come up on my phone. And it's like, you know what? It's 10 o'clock p.m. I should be in bed probably right now, but I need to take this call. And I've said before, I'm not one of those realtors that's like, you know what, at 6 o'clock, I'm shutting off my phone. I've got a work phone and a personal phone, and I'm not going to be taking any calls on my work phone. Man, there's a lot of realtors out there that they brag about that, which I think is kind of weird. I don't do that. If I have an important call come in late at night and I'm still awake and coherent, I'm going to take that call. So I take the call from this realtor. And she's like, listen, here's the situation. And the long story short was we had to nail down a couple of other terms. But she told me that, hey, your clients, at the end of the day, where we are right now, if they could come up on their price a little bit, that would be great. Because the offer that we currently have is significantly higher than their offer. Even if they come up to, she gave me a number. You're like, even if they came up to that, it still wouldn't be as high as what the current offer is. And she clarified that her clients had given her permission to reveal that information, which is helpful. But she said even if you come up to that number, that won't exceed the other offer that we have. But as high as you can come up, the better, because I would much rather work with you, and I know how you operate. We're in the same company. I'm confident that this would be a smooth transaction versus this other agent who is with XYZ firm. I won't say what firm the other agent was with, and did not present her offer very well. Actually, she just... If you're on Twitter or some of these other social media platforms, you maybe heard people talk about sliding into someone's DMs, and which is another way of saying, like, if it's someone that you don't know. This happens to women a lot in social media, where a male that they don't know will just send them a random message. That's called sliding into their DMs. Well, we have situation where realtors will slide an offer into your email box, and all of a sudden you open your email, you didn't get a text or a call or anything, and oh, there's an offer in there. And it's kind of nice, but it's also kind of weird. As a realtor, you should be getting notified if an offer is coming in your inbox. And so this agent had done that, and the listing agent was like, kind of off put by that. By the lack of presentation, by some other unprofessional aspects of that agent. And at the end of the day, she was like, hey, I would rather work with you guys. And so the long story short is we were able to come up a little bit on the price, nail out some other terms and whatnot that they needed in order to work with us. And even though she revealed to me after the fact the other offer was still higher than what we ended up on, we got I got my buyer client under contract for the house that they wanted for a lower price than the other offer. And the agent was very candid with me. She was like, it was because of your presentation, your professionalism versus the other one. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, right? Obviously, this is a story that that makes me look good. But this is my podcast, so I'm going to tell whatever story that I want to tell. But the point being that this is an important thing, realtor presentation. And as a listing agent, I experience this when I'm selling a home as well. When I'm assessing an offer, and I think this is the case with any good realtor, there is a human element to this, right? The offer comes in on paper, it's very black and white, but there's a human element. We're trying to assess more than just the black and white, just the paper. And I think that that's why realtors have still been successful even in this era with so much technology, is because we can navigate some of the human aspects of a transaction. And one of the things that I'm assessing is not just the offer, the terms of the offer, the purchase price and whatnot, but the realtor that sent it. Again, I need to clarify, just so that nobody freaks out, I will always present an offer, and I'm not going to focus on the realtor on the other side. If there are two offers and one of them is just way better than the other, I might say to my seller client, hey, I got two offers. One of them is way better than the other, and that would, that one is probably the one that we need to be focused on. But the agent with the other offer, I have a good relationship with them. You should just know that. But at the end of the day, you're probably, if we can't get either party to budge, you probably want to accept the higher offer, right? Because it's a significantly higher offer. But part of what we are assessing as well with an offer is, will this actually get to closing? It's not just the purchase price. It's no good, if someone comes in and they offer you double what you've got it listed for, that doesn't matter if they don't get it to closing. And so a lot of seller clients will accept a lower offer if they are more assured that it will get to closing. And so those are the little nuances that we as realtors are trying to pick up when we're talking to other realtors in the marketplace. And this is where the whole sliding an offer into your inbox, that's one of the worst things for me as a listing agent. When that happens, it's like, really? Like you didn't take the time to check in with me to see if we had other offers, to see, what the situation was, to inform me that you were sending me an offer. In the case of this other agent, the listing agent for the house that my buyers got under contract for, she said that there was even kind of an aggressive expiration date on the offer. So it was like she wasn't even told that she was receiving an offer. She received it. It came in at night, and the expiration was for like the next morning, like early in the morning. And so that's not a very good way of presenting the offer. But there are a lot of realtors out there that are doing that. I had a realtor, a buyer's agent, that came in not too long ago and put an offer on one of my listings, and I could just tell right away this was going to be a difficult person to deal with. And at the end of the day, her offer was pretty strong, and I was able to negotiate some back and forth, and my seller client did accept a counter. We, after multiple rounds of countering, did come to an agreement, went under contract. But my gut the whole time was like, and I told him, I was just like, this realtor is really making me concerned, because she just doesn't really seem to know what's going on. She is acting like an inspector, going around and getting, doing all these different things that you would normally have an inspector do, even though she's not licensed to do that. And doesn't seem to really have an understanding of the contract language. But it was the only offer we had, and it was a pretty strong offer. So we got it under contract, and then that buyer's agent literally derailed that transaction. She ended up causing, on her own, a lot of issues. And of course, I'm not going to say who it was, but she caused a whole lot of issues that were unnecessary, just sowed all these seeds of doubt in her client's mind. I don't know if she was trying to, if she was concerned for liability or if she was trying to protect them or whatever the case may be. But I walked away from that thinking, I don't want to ever work with this realtor again if I can avoid it. Because she caused a lot of issues for my client. She ended up at one point leaving the AC on like 50 in a vacant home, and it ran for, but we didn't realize it for several weeks that it was just left on 50 degrees, which is awful. My client found out when he had a massive electric bill the next month. And so these are the types of things that we have to deal with. And these are the things, in hindsight, maybe I should have, been a little bit firmer with my client of just being like, hey, listen, my gut is screaming right now, this is going to be a difficult transaction. In hindsight, I've talked to my client, and he actually does wish that I had been a little bit more forthcoming on that. We have to be careful, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not our job to judge other realtors. That's more of an anecdotal part of the equation. We do want to, at the end of the day, focus on the contracts that we have and the offers that we have. And I've worked with a lot of bad realtors, and we've been able to make it work. It's more work for me, but that's what I get paid to do. But there's another way that, off the top of my head that we're assessing these other realtors and assessing offers that they might bring and whatnot. And that's when you're actually looking at the paperwork, what we call the Form 310, SCR 310, the more or less standard contract that's used among realtors here in the Greenville area. There are all kinds of different fields and boxes that have to be filled out. And I can literally look at the offer, look at the paperwork that's sent to me, and know if that realtor knows what he or she is doing or not. A lot of them, you can look at just the way they fill out the offer, that there are just little quirks here and there, things that are unconventional. We have, very conventional ways, because it's a standardized form. There's very conventional ways of filling it out. You get a realtor that fills some things out differently than the other 98% of realtors out there. It's probably because it's one of the first times that he or she is doing it, or he or she has not been trained in it, or he or she just, hasn't been paying attention to the way other people do it and the way it's supposed to be done, whatever the case may be. But when I'm looking at an offer, that's one of those things that I'm looking at as well. I'm not just looking at the price point. I'm not just looking at, how many closing costs are there that they're asking for the seller to pay, how many, days is the inspection period, et cetera, et cetera. There are these little ways of reading in between the lines that an offer can be assessed. And it is assessed in that way. And so when you have a buyer's agent, you need to make sure your buyer's agent knows what he or she is doing. It really does make a difference. I am not the only realtor, as is obvious based on my story. I'm not the only realtor. The listing agent I referenced before is not the only realtor that looks at more than just the offer. There is a lot that goes into someone writing an offer. There's a ton of realtors out there right now. And so because there are a ton of realtors out there, and because there are realtors, as I already mentioned before, that are so bad that they will actually derail a transaction, we as listing agents have to assess the realtor as well. We have to look at the realtor, what firm they're with, these different things. And that might not be the deciding factor, but it could be a tiebreaker. You get if I get two offers that are equal, and I've got one realtor that is very professional, has a good background, a good reputation, works for a professional firm, and another realtor that the offer is exactly the same, but there's a lot of unprofessional aspects, comes from an office that I've had issues with in the past. at the end of the day, I'm going to at least let my clients know that, my seller client know that. I feel like that is, at least in terms of the transaction, a material fact. That's something I have to reveal. Hey, I've worked with these two parties, and they are not co-equals in terms of being professionals in real estate. Another thing that we run into is realtors giving a lot of background information, telling a lot of stories about their clients. There is a lot of debate over how much storytelling should happen in a real estate transaction. And I tend to think that less is more, but there's a fine line, right? So, an example of storytelling that could backfire is, let's say that you as a realtor are trying to portray that your buyer client is serious and she really wants to move into this home. She is not just, putting her toe in the water. She's not just, trying to get a house under contract and then going to back out. She's really serious. And so you start giving some background information about how, she's a single mom. She's been, living with her friend for a while, and, it's just been a tough time for her, and she's ready to get her own house. She's desperate to move. She loves this house. This is the one for her. She's got to get this under contract. You might have a realtor that presents an offer in that way. And I would say that's going to backfire a lot of the times, because what happens is, so, let's say that a realtor presents an offer to me like that for a house that I have listed. I am going to go back to my client and just relay that information and let the chips fall where they may. A lot of clients, seller clients in that situation, will draw bad conclusions from that story. They'll create a narrative that is the opposite of what the buyer's agent was trying to create. They might come up with, for instance, an idea that, oh, well, this is a single mom. I mean, is her job secure? I mean, what, does she have a lot of stability? I mean, will she, are we going to run into issues down the road with her being able to, actually afford the down payment? I mean, people will come up with, I'm not saying that that's the right thing, and I don't encourage my clients to come up with those narratives, but I promise you they happen. And what happens is the narratives that people come up with are almost always negative, because people come up with the narrative that they want to believe. And oftentimes, I think it's just human nature. When you're trying to buy or sell a home, you're distrustful of the other person. And having a narrative attached to that person you will basically, if you get more details on the person that you already distrust, then you just take those details and you make them fit the narrative that you have. And I've seen this happen so often. I had a client recently that said, that I really needed to tell their story to the listing agent in order to get their offer accepted. And I was like, first off, I know how to negotiate. I know how to get an offer accepted. I didn't say that because that would have come across the wrong way, but I was thinking that in my mind. I've done this before. I know how to get an offer accepted. But more, I was thinking, man, the story that you're wanting me to tell that agent would completely, most likely, be distorted possibly by that agent, and probably by the sellers. And so I do give personal details, but I'm very careful. If the personal details can help, but you have to be very careful, and I am very careful that those details can't be twisted. And at the end of the day, it's hard. It's hard to do, and that's why I say that less is more. A lot of realtors give way too much information, and then you get, sometimes clients that will write letters, buyer clients that will write letters to sellers saying, I really love this house. This is my dream home. And again, those usually don't help. If it's a great offer, and if that letter from the buyer to the seller, doesn't scream of desperation, I think it could work, all else being equal. Like, for instance, in a multiple offer situation, if that offer is comparable to the other offers, but they make a very compelling case that they really want the house, and they have a lot of skin in the game, that could help. But it could also backfire. I mean, you've got situations where some people might write letters that have tons of grammar and spelling issues. Even with, all the grammar and spell checks that we have, that's not uncommon. That doesn't come across well. Again, you get a situation where someone starts creating the narrative. I get that letter from the buyer's agent. I'm going to pass that on to my seller. That's my responsibility. The seller can draw their own conclusions. If the letter has a ton of spelling and grammar errors, I'm sorry, but whether it's right or wrong, that seller is going to draw some conclusions about the buyer that aren't going to be positive. And you've got a situation where they, again, give too many details on their family, and on their personal situation. They say we've made multiple offers on multiple homes and have been outbid on all of them, and we really, this home at the end of the day is better than all of them. We really feel like this home was put in our lap. That type of thing. Well, then, I've had situations where seller clients have been like, why have they had multiple offers rejected? Like, are they doing something wrong? Like, is there something that we're missing here? And then they start asking those types of questions. And so, again, we have to be very, very careful, very cautious with how we present an offer. Your offer presentation is extremely important. And at the end of the day, as is the case with the story I told earlier, sometimes the offer presentation can make or break a deal. And sometimes the offer presentation is the deciding factor between the seller accepting one offer versus another. And so it's very important. Keep that in mind. I know a lot of people that will just use a realtor as their buyer's agent because they think, this is going to be straightforward. What could go wrong? There is a lot that could go wrong. Don't just use a buyer's agent that's just a friend that you just want to help them out. You need to find someone that's professional, that will represent you, that knows how to fill out a contract in a way that won't raise eyebrows, that won't reveal too much information, that will paint a narrative in the seller's minds that will actually put you at a disadvantage. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong here. And on the flip side, all sorts of things that can go right. A lot of different presentation tactics. I'll probably record that in another podcast. But a lot of different things that a good buyer's agent can do in order to present an offer in the strongest way possible. Well, that's it for today's episode. If you need a buyer's agent to present an offer in the strongest way possible, I am your guy. My contact information is in the show notes. And until we talk again next week, I hope you guys stay safe and have a great time.